I want to take today's opportunity to share one person's story with you, and that's Arlene's story, and use her story as a lens into what so many American renters are facing today, as you well know, and a reminder for why your work is so important for families today. So Arlene had a 14-year-old son named Jory. Mike. Mike's like, I'm never giving a speaker my name again. So Arlene had a 14-year-old son named Jory, and one day he was cutting up, throwing snowballs at passing cars. Does it snow here?
Yes.
Okay. And he smacked this car, and the car was like, and this man jumped out. So Jory and his cousin ran inside, and they locked the door, but this man followed them in there, and he kicked the door down, busted the door in. And thank God he left before anything else happened. But when Arlene's landlord found out about that, she decided to evict Arlene and her boys for damaging property. So Arlene took her two sons, Jory and Jafaris, who was 6 at the time, to the Salvation Army homeless shelter, which everyone in Milwaukee just calls the Lodge. So you can tell your kids, like, we're staying at the Lodge tonight, like it's a hotel. And from there, they were on the hunt for another place to live. And they found this place, which was on 19th Street. But there was often no water, and Jory had a bucket out, which was in the toilet. But Arlene told me, it was $525 for a whole house. It was quiet. It was my favorite place. When we did an analysis of the survey that we conducted, and we asked what happens to families after they're evicted, one thing that we found is that they move into much worse housing than they lived in before. So if we want to know why some kids live with like paint, exposed wires, no heat, no water, one reason is their families are forced to accept those kinds of conditions in the harried aftermath of an eviction. So the city eventually found this place unfit for human habitation, and they boarded up the windows and the doors, and Arlene was on the hunt for another place to live. And she told Jory, we take whatever we could get, which is what moving looks like when you're in that kind of predicament, just taking whatever you could get. And what Arlene could get was this drab apartment complex on Atkinson Avenue. But she soon learned it was a haven for drug dealers. In fact, the whole block was drug-soaked and hot, and she feared for her boys, like any mother would, especially for Jory, who had this beautiful smile and would talk to anyone. So in Arlene's case, why she moved, the fact that she was forced out of this place, was pretty important for understanding why she ended up in such a bad neighborhood. And we thought, can we test that statistically? We did. We found that you can control for a lot of different things. And you still see families getting evicted, moving from poor neighborhoods to even poorer ones. They move from high crime areas to even more violent blocks. Eviction seems to push families deeper into disadvantage. So Arlene moved off of Atkinson as fast as she could. She found this 2-bedroom bottom unit duplex on 13th Street in Keith. There was a big old hole in the living room window. The carpet was just filthy and ground in. The door had to be locked with like a plank you slid into brackets. But Arlene put on a good face. She hung up curtains and she took a piece of cloth and she stuffed in that hole in the window. The rent for this kind of place, which is located in a poor neighborhood in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which at this time was our 4th poorest city in the nation, was $550 a month, utilities not included, which consumed 88% of Arlene's welfare. And she knew that some months she would have to sell her food stamps to make rent, and her boys would get by oodles and noodles. When you're spending over 80% of your income on rent, there's no extra money for anything, like toys for Jafaris, clothes for Jory. So Jafaris had this like amazing ability to transform like a bucket or a mop handle or like a screwdriver, whatever he could get his hands on, into soldiers and tanks, like engaged in warfare. So as you guys know well, like Arlene is not alone in spending the vast majority of her income on housing. There's been this agreement in this country for the last 100 years that we should spend 30% of our income on housing. That gives us enough money to save, afford enough food. And for a long part of our history, most renters met that goal, but times have changed. So this graph shows the percentage of poor renting families spending 30% or less of their income on housing, that's that blue line, or 50% or more of their income on housing, that's that orange line. So the percent of our poorest families in America who are renters who are hitting our standard of affordability has just gone down and down and down, but the percent who are incredibly rent burdened has gone up and up and up, to the point that today, the majority of poor renting Americans are spending half of their income on housing costs. And about 1 in 4 of those families are spending over 70% of their income just on rent and utilities. Like 70% of your income, like gone at the beginning of the month. If you want a roof over your head and hot water, under those conditions, you don't need to make like a huge mistake or have like a big emergency wash over your life to get evicted. Something as small as a snowball can do it. So for folks like Arlene, eviction is much more the result of inevitability than irresponsibility.